Welcome to the call, everyone. This is officially our first webinar. We're so happy to have you on with us, and we're going to be kicking this off. So if you're coming on, your line is muted. No worries, there'll be no interruptions. And without further ado, today's webinar is on active listening in virtual recruitment. And I'm going to hand it over to Nolene, our training specialist.
Awesome. Thanks, Danny. So just from a presenter perspective, I just wanted to introduce Michael is the founder and technical director of Danny can give a little bit more now about who he is in terms of, Mike's been in the industry for years and a lot, and this is why we were doing the presentation, is because most of his conversation has been over the phone when he initially has conversations with candidates. And so that active listening becomes second nature when something that you've been doing all the time. But because of the pandemic, this is not something that most people within the recruitment, that being interviewed space is not used to. And this is why we've asked Michael for some insights and why we're doing the presentation. Danny is a tech talent specialist that works within the GATE community and the GATE staffing. I'm a training specialist. I have 20 years of background within training. And so hence the reason why I'm presenting the topic that we're talking to today. An introduction into active listening. So what we're going to be talking about today is what is the difference between hearing and listening? Now, you often probably say this to your children. Did you not hear me? They probably heard you, but they didn't actively listen, right? 4 tips to help you with your telephone interview skills. And then you get an opportunity to have a discussion with Danny and Michael, more around some questions and specific questions you may have to address some of the issues that you are finding in the workplace right now. So if we looked at what is the definition of listening. Now, the difference between hearing and listening, hearing is an event, something which happens to us in the natural process. Listening is an action to something that we do consciously. So let's say, for instance, give you some example. If you're not used to a train track running past your house and the trains are going, you are actively listening because it's something that you consciously are aware of every single time. You might even wake up in the middle of the night at first. For instance, we only see it in the movies, but Brooklyn, the whole Brooklyn Bridge and, the train. But once you've gotten used to, then you're only hearing it. And when someone points it out, oh, by the way, dude, someone's talking to you, then only do you actually participate in the conversation. So the difference between hearing something and listening is your participation in that conversation. So what we're going to be doing is, how are you paying attention to the conversation? Are you interrupting, or are you kind of just interjecting and showing that you're present? Have you taken the time to understand what that person is really trying to say? And we're going to go into some tools for that as well, and listening to what's being said. So, it's one thing to hear something, but to actually understand something means that you might need to ask a few more questions to actively understand what is being said. Let's give you an example. When someone says to us today, especially now could be, the time of the day, the pandemic, month end, whatever, financial year end. We don't know what that now means to that specific person. So I was on a call recently and I said, what does your now mean? Because that is participating in the conversation and listening to understand. And what they were talking about was the pandemic, the new reality, the new whatever we are facing right now, each of us are in our own little boats, and it could be a big ship or a little boat, but we're all in the same sea. Swarms are coming at different times, at different paces. And what we're trying to do here now with Gate is, how do we navigate the new recruitment way, and give you some tips on some things that we've been doing for years. So actively listening, and part of that screening process before we actually take the candidates, not just looking at the resumes, but actually actively looking and saying, okay, so how can we make sure that this is the right fit into the right organization? So it's a particularly useful tool during job interviews. To also, how are you establishing that rapport? So the 4 things we're going to focus on today, and the recording will be available afterwards, is oral communication skills. Now, we've all got communication skills, whether they're good or bad. It all depends on, and not necessarily our education. I've known people that are highly educated, but when it comes to talking to people, they freeze. They're not able to have that conversation. Specifically within the IT industry, as my kids would say, specifically, within the IT space, these the guys that you are talking to, the people that you are recruiting into your organization, they're highly intellectual, but not necessarily people friendly. So what you need to do is build up that rapport with that person, so that the oral communication skills is not overlooked, because essentially that person needs to be able to communicate. So what you're wanting to do is communicate in such a way that you are actively listening and putting them at ease, but you are also not saying, I don't want you to be able to communicate, because if they are running with a team, if they're a project manager within a specific field, you need to make sure that they can communicate effectively. And this is one way of making sure, because now everything is virtually, right? So this is definitely one way to make sure that when you are communicating with that person, you first set them off, in terms of set them at ease, not set them off, set them at ease, so that they can communicate better with you, and they're a little bit at ease. They're not so stressed. It's very nervous to have a call with with a recruiter. But now that they're at ease, how are their communication skills? Are they taking notes? What you're wanting to do is make sure that that person can communicate. Because if they can't communicate with you, how are they supposed to communicate in a team and be able to get their point across? So it is very important to make sure that this is one of the skills. If you are a candidate looking for a job, or if you are in recruitment, communication and understanding how to communicate is essential these days. It's not an option, it's an essential. And there's loads of courses out there to teach you how to communicate better. This is just kind of a 2 minutes, here it is. Interjections, not interruptions. So an interjection is the yes, okay, yeah, really, okay, yes, I'm listening. Not, so what do you mean by that? And then suddenly it takes them off into another direction. Because what you're wanting to do is first listen to their train of thought, make a note of the question that you want to ask them and want clarity on. So that take you back to, what do you mean by now? Then they can tell you what they mean by now, but don't interrupt their flow. Make sure that you are participating and making that they are being heard, because sometimes what happens is that the interviewer gets so silent, or they actually mute themselves because the dog is barking, because, oh yes, we're working from home now. So, I've actually put my dogs into our laundry so that we don't have the yapping outside for interruption purposes. But when you are allowing yourself to listen and you are also taking notes, you are suddenly then participating in the conversation a lot better and hearing a lot better, which then takes us over to the verbal image. Now, what we mean by verbal image is the person sitting up? Is the person standing? Can you hear if there's people around them while you are busy having a conversation that they're actually being disrupted by a child coming over to them at the same time? Because then you could actually say to them, do you mind if you actually just go to another room so that we can have this call without any further interruptions? Um, it's something that the candidate has to be aware of, because if you're putting that candidate forward, the same thing's going to happen there. And if they can't respect the time, the 15 minutes or whatever it is, the call that you're busy with, we need to make sure that we're presenting proper candidates to the organization, that there's a proper culture fit. When there is a meeting, it's short, sharp, and punchy and to the point and without interruption. Yes, there are exceptions to the rule and you can hear the interjections, but try and imagine what you are hearing. Is that person actually physically writing down? Is that person paying attention? Or actually, are you hearing someone, you know, type away on the keyboard? You know, that is just, then you're kind of saying, okay, are you taking notes on your keyboard? So don't make an assumption that they're typing an email, because they might actually be typing some notes. Because I nowadays, rather than writing a lot of the stuff, I actually type it up, especially if it's a meeting, so that I can summarize it a lot easier. It all depends on that person's style, but ask the questions. Ask what are they doing, you know, that kind of scenario, so you can envisage what is that person going to be like when they're actually being interviewed by the clients as well. And then the last point we want to kind of focus on is the interest in the position. Now, if your candidate has done their homework, the interest in the position would also be about the organization. They would have questions. They would want to understand more about, what do you mean by project managing an IT department? Does that include 7 people or 2 people? Whatever that looks like, you want to make sure that that person is interested in the position, but also asking culturally fit questions. What we do here at Gates is we want to make sure that the candidate is the right person within the right organization, that it's not just, okay, we looked at your resume, so we're sending it forward. That's why we do a call with the client, with the candidate. We kind of understand who are they, where they're at. Mike does this in his sleep. So, when he's on a call, Mike is sitting and he's having that conversation. He's making his notes. He's been doing this for over 10 years. So this comes naturally to him. But for those of us that are new in this situation, we need to make sure that we're asking the right questions. And those questions would even relate to, do you arrive at work on time? Are you someone that, I don't know, prefers tea or coffee? It might sound like silly questions, but in the hindsight, it's a totally different environment. Let's say we ask that person to be coming into the office once a week, or it is in the office position. What does that look like? What is the office? Are you open to coming into the office once a week? Because we can't assume nowadays that the people are willing to actually just come forward and say, yes, I want to go into the office. They might have at risk people at home and they don't want to come into the office because of possible infection. If you're a doctor and a nurse and frontline staff, it's a totally different aspect. You don't have much of a choice. And your family respects that choice because it's a choice you made many, many years ago. But when it comes to IT and backend, it's more around the communication skills and where they're sitting and how they're presenting. Do they have their own space to be able to work from home? Because some IT people don't have, or not even just IT people, some people around the world don't even have their own space to be able to sit and have that conversation. So when you're asking about the position and the interest and we're matching it up, then you want to make sure that the culture fit is as well into that business, and that they're actually interested in who the business is and asking about those questions. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Danny and give you a little bit more about who is Gate. So I know this was a short, sharp, and punchy, but we want to keep it to 20 minutes and allow for some time for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Nolene, and wonderful presentation as always. I always get to learn something new when you speak. I have so many years experience training in the field, so thanks again. So at this point, we're going to talk a little bit about Gate and who we are, who we serve, and of course, maybe how we can help you a little bit in your efforts as well, your projects. So Gate is a full service IT consulting and staffing agency. If you ask me, I say we're the Flintstones and the Jetsons, time frame, because we do offer futuristic technology, very advanced technology to source candidates and get very close to what our clients want. We don't always hit it right on the head, but we get very close, and we use our tools to help, dive deep into what our clients are really looking for. And so with our backgrounds in digital marketing, IT, and recruitment, we collectively can work together, and we do, and we help find those best candidates. So who do we serve? We basically serve startups to enterprise level clients. So anything from startup to Fortune 50 customers. What I'll show you on the next slide is going to be just a summary of some of our clients, but for this purpose, we can handle any project. So we may start off as consulting. So let's say you have a project, a need, or let's say that you have an objective you're looking to, you have an objective in mind, but you really don't know what roles that you need. We could come in on any level and help you. We can advise you on what you may need to build that internally. We can also assist in many different ways. We have our own set of candidates here. We've built a network pool of over 10,000 candidates and consultants, and we provide executive, retained, and managed search options. So we're very flexible in terms of our offering. And if you need a part-time or full-time consultants, it's something we can definitely do. We serve most of our clients all over the US. Our firm started here in New York City, but we have spread all over the US in the last few years. So no matter where you are, we can certainly help you, or at least take a call and see if it is a way we can assist in your project. And also, I want to mention too that we also specialize in Workday solutions across all enterprise applications. So very excited to offer that as well to all of our clients and potential clients. Nolene? So here's just just some of our active clients that we service today. As you can see, some names you might recognize and others not. So we do cover a wide range, and we'd be happy to discuss any of your needs if you have hiring needs. So at this point, we're going to ask Mr. Michael Innamorato, our founder, visionary, and recruiter, to jump on with us. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat. That will allow us to take your questions and get them answered, hopefully. And if not, we'll see where we go. Mike, are you on with us?
Yes, thank you for that introduction, Danny. I do appreciate that. And Nolene, thank you for making the time, and everyone who took time out of their day to be here and kind of do this with us. So I appreciate that.
You're most welcome.
Yeah, definitely. So interesting. So I appreciate the points here that were made, and if there's any questions about who we are, please feel free to ask. But Danny, I think it's this was an interesting way to get out there in terms of using webinar to provide information that we have that could be of use to anyone that might be looking for something specific, be it, if they're looking for some sort of advice or anything like that. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, this has become this was a natural fit for us because we were getting a lot of questions. Some of those will present if we don't have any questions here. But yes, it puts us on a platform in which we can speak, openly to anyone. And as our network is growing, we want to be able to offer as much value to our clients and prospective clients as we can. And by the way, we will be doing these monthly. So if you're on for the first time, it's our first time. And so this is a webinar that we'll be scheduling, like I said, different topics that we find are interesting, those that we find that is not a lot of research that has been developed in a webinar, and we're going to come out and offer that for you. So does anyone have any questions?
Yes, there is a question.
Yeah, Mike, we have a question. So why do you think active listening is important in virtual recruiting? What do you have to say about that?
I think it's important in general. I'm not sure if just in virtual recruiting, but when you really listen and try to, and slow down and be patient and listen to the words that are coming out of someone's vocabulary, and really understanding what the conversation is all about, I think is super helpful in life in general. So you could say it's recruitment, but yeah. So I think I don't know if that answers the question specifically, but
yeah, absolutely.
Does that resonate with you guys, or?
That sounds good to me. If you don't mind, I may add that on a virtual recruiting level, I feel that where the difference is in person as opposed to virtual, it's even more important to listen because you're not actually in front of that person. So all we really have is a visual, if you have a video, or the actual voice, but you don't have the body language necessarily all the time. So that's why I think active listening is so important in virtual than anything else. Again, you have that communication, and that's what you got to hone in on and focus in on, because it can help you if you do it right, to ask the right questions and all the things that Nolene mentioned, get us closer to what we're looking for or to connect us. All right, a few more questions. How should you provide critical feedback to candidates?
Do you want me to take that?
Absolutely, Mike. What would you say in terms of if there's feedback that is critical to, I would imagine, the project, or let's say that it's a no? How do you provide critical feedback that a candidate might want to know, or need to know?
Well, I think honesty is the best policy, but that took me a long time to figure that out. So depending on kind of where you're looking at it, where you at in the situation in terms of providing that type of feedback is critical, in terms of what your role is with that, so be mindful of that. But I think that if giving feedback is critical, and I think that if you have the details, and I think if you have the information, you should share it.
Absolutely.
So it only could be helpful, and if it's not, then I don't know if it's critical feedback. Maybe there's something there that shouldn't be said or something.
Yeah. Here's another one. For PhD students with little industry experience, what is the best way to land senior power engineering positions, even though most of them require 10+ years experience?
Can you repeat that?
For PhD students with little industry experience, what's the best way to land a senior power engineering position, even though most of them require 10 years experience? It's catch-22, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it really is.
It's a tough one.
Well, I think you have to get to the job description and stuff. It requires 10 years of experience. I mean, if that's required, then something's off with the job description itself.
Right.
Right. So,
Yeah, I would say in some cases that a PhD student may already have some hands-on experience or more, let's say, education than someone else, where potentially, Mike, we've actually experienced this a few times where a client may request 10 plus years experience, but we may find someone that checks other boxes that they can qualify for, say, 7 to 10 years or something like that, where it's not always, like a hard rule, right? So it all depends, I think, on the individual and the need, right?
yeah, then also finding out the actual need, if that's realistic, right? It seems like it might not be a realistic need, specific need that the client might have, right? So just really getting down to the bottom of the need and the person, I think, is important.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
It does to me. Absolutely. Yes, no problem, Khalid. So one other question we have here, how to engage candidates in the COVID-19 pandemic? I would say through this platform. I mean, through virtual, recruitment, I think is the best way. I think that's a lot of what we're seeing here is that every client has a different need, right? So some are opening, some are partially open, some are fully remote, and we have to handle it case by case. Would you agree?
Yeah, can you repeat that again? I'm sorry. I want to make sure
How
I'm
to
actively
engage?
listening here, so I got to make sure that I understand what you're saying.
Absolutely. So the question is how to engage, how would we engage, I would imagine, candidates, or how to engage candidates in the COVID-19 pandemic?
Okay, a little confusing of a question exactly, but
Yes.
engaging candidates, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. I mean, we could go through what we've done, right? A webinar, like you mentioned, this webinar is one way. I've done, you could do video. There's a bunch of different ways you could get the message out there to engage your candidates. You really just have to get out there and just start being active and involved, and getting involved in different things, and getting in, this different communities you get involved in, and forums and groups and stuff. So I think the active engagement in what you're doing is important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's all we have time for today, guys. Well, thanks everyone for coming on. And Nolene, if you could just leave that screen up for those that are sticking around, different ways to reach us. Feel free to reach out if you're not already connected on LinkedIn or email. Everything is here in terms of where you could find us. We're very much available. 877-369-GATE. Of course, our email, our website, LinkedIn is active. And feel free to jump in our conversations. We'd love to have you on our next webinar where we're going to share some new topics. Can't reveal that right now, but look out on LinkedIn and email for some updates on that. And if you have any projects that you'd like us to take a look at, or even questions about those projects, let us know. Be happy to help you. So thank you for coming on, everyone. If it's your morning or afternoon or evening, have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
All right, thank you.
Bye, everybody.